Coming up now on 7:13, Acadiana's Morning News, Bernadette Lee and Brandon Como. It is Tuesday morning, and as promised, we have one of the gentlemen in studio who wants to be Lafayette Parish's next sheriff, Rick Chargois, joining us in studio. And good morning to you. How you doing this morning, sir?
Good morning. How are y'all?
Oh, we're
doing good.
We're glad it's not Monday.
Absolutely. Every day is Monday for us right now during the campaign.
Oh, I bet that is absolutely true. So how are you finding this campaign? Describe it, kind of give us your thoughts. I don't think it's quite like anybody ever expects it's going to be, maybe, or what are your thoughts?
I think it's a good process to go through.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure that I'd wish it on anybody because it's both a great thing and a difficult thing.
Mm-hmm.
I really enjoy getting out in the community, meeting the people that are out there, listening to what their concerns are,
Yeah.
and how to relate to them and understand what I can bring to them as their next sheriff. But it's also a difficult process. You have a lot of negative things going on out in the community right now, a lot of mudslinging, and that just makes it uncomfortable. Everybody, tries to get involved in the mess, and I just try to stay above the fray.
Mm-hmm. And that's what a candidate can do, right? That's the best way, I guess, that you can handle that type of situation.
That's right. We took a position from the very beginning, and I met with each of the candidates, and I told them that I thought we were all in the race for a position, not against each other.
Mm-hmm.
I respect each of the people that are in the race, so I've always tried to maintain a positive posture and not speak ill of any of the other candidates and just try to promote myself. I think the background that I have in public safety and law enforcement can stand on its own, and that's what I speak about when I go to different events and talk to people in the community.
So let's talk a little bit about that background and give folks who maybe have not had a chance to know as much about you. What is a kind of a synopsis of your experience and what your background is with law enforcement and maybe even your law enforcement philosophy?
Well, it starts off as a child, literally. I was born into law enforcement because my father was a Louisiana state trooper when I was born. He rose to the rank of major while I was living with him in his home, so I was able to watch public safety and law enforcement through his eyes. And as most kids, if you watch little boys, they are fascinated by police and firemen. So I had one in my house that was running a third of the Louisiana State Police at the time. So it gave me a good foundation on what public safety service was. He also rose to the rank of chief deputy at the Lafayette Sheriff's Office, which again gave me another insight into the Lafayette Sheriff's Office. And by the time I was 13 years old, I knew I was going to be a Louisiana State Trooper, much to his chagrin. But that was, we never want our children to be what we are, I'm sure. But it was good. I mean, I enjoyed my childhood. I enjoyed watching state police. I mean, at the time, Louisiana State Police had the most aggressive and successful smuggling program in the country. So I'm watching all these guys working undercover and bringing in tons and tons of dope and putting a lot of people in jail, and that was fascinating as a child. So by the time I was 19 years old, I applied and I became a Louisiana State Trooper at 19 years old. I was the second youngest ever hired into the department. And through that career, I worked in uniform operations, which covered a multitude of things, traffic, special task force operations to reduce fatalities in high traffic areas, high violation areas. I worked in SWAT. I was a counter sniper for the SWAT team. I was a regional SWAT coordinator. I was the hurricane evacuation coordinator for Troop I for a number of years. And then I went to the training academy. I taught at the training academy for about 4 years. I was the firearms unit supervisor for state police, which meant I was responsible for all firearms-related training, use of force, writing of policy. I served on the shooting review board for the Louisiana State Police. I served on the shooting team for Louisiana, the investigation team. And then after leaving the academy, I was blessed to be promoted to district lieutenant for West District Narcotics, which was a third of the state police narcotics section. And we worked primarily mid to upper level smuggling. So that's when I really started to learn the politics of law enforcement, the people that were involved in heavy narcotics trafficking, and it's a different world when you step into that. You also realize the true effect of narcotics on the community, the amount of crime that is derived from narcotics trafficking and people that are addicted to drugs. And you also have to recognize then that there are a lot of people that need your help, not just be put in jail, but they need your help to work through some of these problems. So that was a very extraordinary experience that also put me into the administrative level of Louisiana State Police, where you're working with budgets, you're working with, overall department policy. I was involved in policy for the department. We were involved in the intelligence aspect of the department, future planning, goals and objectives for the organization. That's when you really start getting the leadership education that the department provides for you. And after that, I was transferred into general gaming. I worked gaming suitability for a number of months before I was transferred into general gaming as the executive officer for the gaming section. It was a statewide command in which we did criminal investigations and gaming investigations for the remainder of my career. So a lot of people, when you say that you're a former trooper, they think about the guys that are out there writing tickets and working accidents. But that's primarily
so
not what it is. It's so much bigger than that.
Yeah, and there are many former state policemen that have become sheriffs across Louisiana. Do you feel that uniquely sets you apart from the other candidates?
I think it does. We have, right now, we actually went and counted them to see how many. We have 25% of the sheriffs in the state of Louisiana are former troopers. Now, what you have to realize, too, some people say, well, you're going to come in and make it like state police. That's not possible. The sheriff's office runs completely different than the state police. It has primarily different objectives. But the background and experience, the education that they give you, the foundation that they give you for public safety and law enforcement is second to none in the area. So when we bring that into the organization, yes, I think it does set us apart.
Rick Chargois joining us. He's one of the candidates for Lafayette Parish Sheriff, and we're going to be able to spend some time with him between now and the end of this hour as well. So how do you think it translates for you, from your state police background to deciding I'm going to run for Lafayette Parish Sheriff? At that point, when does your mind make the connection of, I really want to do this? It's, jumping in from one public service sector to another. And we know, as we said in the beginning, campaigns can be awfully rough. So what was the real motivation, do you think, to take this step?
It was actually twofold. If you'll remember, about 4 years ago, there was another campaign when Sheriff Newstrom ran again last time. And I decided to throw my name in there last time, not because I wanted to be against Sheriff Newstrom. I think Sheriff Newstrom's done a lot of good things. But people had asked me to run, and there was a possibility people had said he might not run, so we put our name out there, and we had a lot of support. We gained 34% of the vote last time. So it showed me that people were interested in a potential change. Not that there's anything wrong with the sheriff. I think he's a good man, but people have asked me to run. Now, you asked me what the primary motivation was, and I said twofold. The first is the deputies and the employees of the sheriff's office. Honestly, I have been a public safety employee. It's a difficult job, and I want.
It's often a thankless job.
It is, and a lot of times, and it's not for the money for sure, because the sheriff's office.
Well, we're in radio, we get it. No,
I understand. I understand.
Just kidding to the boss people.
It's public service. So you look at what the deputies have to go through on a day-to-day basis. They don't make a lot of money, but they thrive on leadership. They thrive on direction. They want their organization to grow. And they want to be able to provide the services that we're asked to provide. So the first thing was the deputies. I had a lot of deputies come to me and ask me about running, and they felt that I would be a good leader for their organization. But the ultimate primary reason I want to do it is to serve the people of this parish. Lafayette Parish is a beautiful community. It's a vibrant and growing community. We're recognized nationally for a lot of different things.
Yeah.
And to bring business here, to bring people to our community, to grow our community, they need to feel that this community is safe. And that's one of the primary roles of the sheriff. He's the chief law enforcement officer of the parish. So as such, I think with the background I have in public safety and law enforcement services, also the administrative services that the state police provides, I think I can bring that to the sheriff's office and be an excellent sheriff for the people.
Rick Chargois is our guest. We've got a quick break. When we come back, we're going to talk with him a little bit about the current programs in the Lafayette Sheriff's Office, his thoughts in that realm, if you will. It's coming up now on 724. Coming up now on 727, we continue our conversation now with Rick Chargois, one of the candidates who would like to be Lafayette Parish Sheriff. Now, we talked a lot about his experience with state police, administratively, his experience. And one of the questions I'd like to discuss with you is you mentioned early on when we were talking a few minutes back that, you can't just leave people out there to just kind of do things on their own. Sure, we need to incarcerate people, but there are a lot of people that come into our jail with a lot of issues, especially drug issues. And with your background in narcotics, you understand that these people, they need something else because you don't want to turn them back out and make them better criminals when you get them back out there. But the sheriff's office has worked on a lot of different programs. We wanted to get your thoughts on some of the current programs at the sheriff's office. Would you keep them? Would you expand them? What's your philosophy in that area, Mr. Chargois?
Well, I think the sheriff's office has exemplified itself across the country with some of the programs that they have in place. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that I have to lay a foundation for, I think that the taxpayers have invested a lot of time, effort, and money into the Lafayette Sheriff's Office. They've put a lot of trust in the sheriff and follow his direction. Sheriff Newstrom's direction, his vision, has been primarily focused on social reform issues, especially when it comes to the inmates. We have to recognize a lot of things that were thrust upon him that were not expected in the beginning, such as mental health issues that are plaguing the jails, plaguing our communities nationwide. They're a primary issue in there. We also have so many misdemeanor violations that you can't incarcerate everybody. You just can't do it. So when you look at the programs that he has in place, the recognition of some of those programs, I believe in building upon programs. I don't believe in tearing down the organization. It affects the community in a negative way. It affects the employees in a negative way, and definitely the people that those programs serve. So what I want to do is go in and look at each of the programs critically, because these programs, a lot of them were developed as they came up,
right,
as the needs arose.
Mm-hmm. Beds started disappearing in some of these facilities to help people, whether it was mental illness or drugs and alcohol. The beds started disappearing.
That's correct.
Statewide.
So the sheriff had to step up and take control. I mean, he's actually pretty much become the mental health professional of Lafayette Parish. He's become the drug abuse specialist in Lafayette Parish. Now, while I think those programs are excellent, and I think we need to continue those programs and build upon the ones that are working very well, for example, the Juvenile Program. The Juvenile Assessment Program, I think, is one of the most important programs that we have at the sheriff's office. I think that the children that we have out there today, they're struggling in our schools, they're struggling in our community, and when we identify some of these children that have issues, I don't like the concept of just throwing them into the juvenile process, because once you get them caught up in there, it's very difficult to get them out. And the sheriff recognized this. They developed programs to do juvenile assessment and make sure that we can put them on the right path without throwing them in to the system. So I think those types of programs are excellent programs, but we also need to evaluate them critically. We need to make sure that we're doing them in the most financially responsible manner possible. We need to make sure that we're getting the benefit of them that we're looking for. Okay? If I can, I got one more thing I'd like to say about, especially with the mental health things. Because of the federal government reducing the funding for mental health and the state of Louisiana doing the same thing, all of the sheriffs are suffering the same burden. Mm-hmm. They're inundated with inmates that have mental health issues. We have homeless people on the street that are ending up in the jail, again, mental health and drug abuse issues. So the sheriff has to deal with those things right now. But I also think that that's not his primary responsibility. His primary responsibility is public safety and law enforcement, okay? So what we need to do is we need to work with our new city parish government people. We need to work with our new legislators and the new governor that's going to come into office to focus on these issues and try to remove these from the prison facilities. Prison is not a good place for mental health, okay?
Yeah.
We need to remove these people from this into an appropriate facility where they can be evaluated properly and helped. I think all of the candidates are speaking about this. When you take somebody into the jail and he has mental health issues, the sheriff's programs that are in place will address those issues. They'll evaluate them, they'll counsel them, they'll give them the medication they need. But as soon as they leave the facility, they have no aftercare to take care of them. They will regress. They're going to stop taking their medicine. They end up back in the facility. So it's a never-ending cycle that's terrible for the patient. That's number one. but even worse, it's a financial drain to our system. And every dollar that we spend on that is dollars that are not being used for public safety and law enforcement, which makes our community safer, which brings people to our community if we have a safe community. So we have a very complex problem here. I think we need to continue those programs and use them effectively, but still work for a solution to move these people into more appropriate housing and more appropriate programs. And I think collectively we can do that. It's been done in other parts of the country, and we need to look at those models, and we need to work toward that.
Rick Chargois, one of the candidates for Lafayette Parish Sheriff. We shall continue our discussion with him on the way. We've got your Hannity update coming up and local news. Coming up now on 743, we continue our discussion now with Rick Chargois, one of the candidates for Lafayette Parish Sheriff. So before the break, we were talking a little bit about some of the different programs that are, currently with the sheriff's office here in Lafayette, what you think the future might hold for that if you were the person elected for the job. I'd like to talk to you a little bit, too. We touched on it a bit, but I'm interested in your perception, your thoughts on staffing. Is there enough, or are there enough people doing the job at the Lafayette Sheriff's Office in terms of keeping the people safe? What are your thoughts in that area?
Well, I think it's a very complex question, and I'd like to touch on a couple of things. Keeping the people safe is very complex. The Sheriff's Office has a lot of responsibilities now. It not only has the public safety side, which includes uniform patrol, detectives, narcotics enforcement, and all that stuff. We also have a huge prison, and keeping people safe is important in that facility as well. When you look at staffing for the Lafayette Sheriff's Office, according to the numbers I received actually from the sheriff, we have approximately 800 employees at the Lafayette Sheriff's Office, and we only have about 225 of those to 250 that are commissioned to go out and enforce the laws. So when you look at that, it seems very imbalanced to me. I think when it comes to the actual people on the street working to enforce the laws and make our community safer, I think we need more of a presence out there. But remember what I told you about his vision was. The vision of the sheriff was more of a social reform vision. He feels that the primary responsibility for the sheriff as far as enforcement goes is the unincorporated areas, because we have municipalities that take care of those things. My vision is that the sheriff's office should be the overview of law enforcement. They can participate in any of the agencies out there, and we should assist those agencies. I think we should have multi-jurisdictional task force operations where we draw police officers from all of those agencies and work collectively together to make our community safer. But we also have to consider the prison and the way it works. We have inmates there that have to be protected as well from the people inside. And we have officers that work in those facilities, and I think if we're not staffed properly, it places those officers in jeopardy as well. So when I come in, I intend to do a complete personnel needs assessment on both sides of the house, and it's got to be tied directly to the sheriff's vision, and I've given you a little bit about mine. I want the department to be more balanced. I want the prison operations to be safe and effective, but I also want the community to be safe. And I want there to be a presence in the community that they can see, they can communicate with, and participate in making our community safer. Okay.
This is a question that we touched on yesterday, because it did, to me, I think says a lot about what is always said out there. Before we even got on the air this morning, we were talking about how campaigns can be so ugly, and we all know that, right? So, my question is, let's start with the first part of it, which is, with all the rhetoric out there, what is the big misconception you think people might have about you? Because we know perception is reality. And what's the one thing that is probably perfect, dead on accurate? So what's the biggest misconception? And then what is the thing that is exactly right on target about word on the street and discussion? What do you think as far as what you feel about how you have run your race and what you think?
Well, I think one of the big misconceptions in the community right now is that there's only two candidates in this race. There's four of us in this race, but because the two that are out there right now in the public eye the most, they've had the most money to spend, they've put out the most media, but they've also had a lot of negative campaigning against both of them. And not only from the candidates, there's people in the community that are attacking them as well. They attack all of us. What I'd like people to be aware of is that there are more than two candidates in the race. I have been a candidate in the race before. I'm in this race. Although we didn't collect more money than everybody else, we have an effective campaign. We're doing the best we can to get the word out about ourselves. And then you asked about the positive.
Mm-hmm.
I want people to look at the resumes of each of the candidates. I want you to compare us side by side, look at what we've done. As I said earlier, I'm not critical of any candidate in this race. I'm looking for this job. I am running for the office of sheriff. I'm not running against anybody. They're running their race. I'm running mine. We've had a very positive campaign, and I'm very proud of that. I've asked all of the people that support me to stay positive, to not get in the mud with these other people. The people that are supporting each of us are very passionate about their candidates, and they're going to fight, scrape, and do whatever it takes. But I don't want our people to do that. I want them to know that I'm a positive candidate. I've run a positive race. I have an excellent background in public safety service, and if you look at the resumes critically, you will see that I'm an excellent candidate for that job. And I have run my race like I will run the office in the most professional way possible.
So you think the positivity is probably resonating with people who are going to be voting?
Absolutely. As we move around, especially in the last couple of weeks, we're hearing so much about the negative campaigning, and people are saying that they're proud of us for the way that we've run our race and that we've tried to stay positive. I have nothing against any of these guys that are running. I've met them all. I've worked with some of them for many years, and I respect them for what they're doing. This is a difficult process. Some people can be very ugly and very harsh, but we have to rise above that, and we have to promote ourselves in the best way possible. I have an excellent resume to run on, and if people look at it, they'll see that I'm a very good choice to be the sheriff of this parish. I will provide them the best public safety services that the people we surround ourselves with can provide, and the money that's available.
So one thing I'm curious about, we were when Mark Garber, one of the other candidates, was in here, we asked him about working with Lafayette City Marshal's office if he were elected. I want to ask you, how do you see the Lafayette Parish Sheriff's Office, if you are elected as the next sheriff, working with the Lafayette City Marshal's office, with the Lafayette Police Department? What role do you see the Sheriff's Office and you being the sheriff in working with those other police organizations?
That's an excellent question, and it ties in directly to what my background is. The sheriff is constitutionally the chief law enforcement officer of the parish, and as such, I think he needs to take the guidance role of public safety. We're very fortunate that we have the Alita Training Academy here. It's a community law enforcement training center that's actually coordinated by the sheriff's office. We have the ability to provide training to all of the law enforcement agencies around here. We can provide the best training possible for public safety and law enforcement professionals. We can train them all collectively together, so that way the police officers are all working the same. As I move around the community, there's big disparity within the different cultural background sections within our community about how they perceive law enforcement. And I think we need to bridge those gaps. I think we need to get out as a sheriff. We need to get into the community, visit with these people, show them that they can trust law enforcement, that they can communicate with law enforcement. And as the sheriff, I need to work with all of those chiefs. I've worked with them before. I've worked with the city marshal before. When he was a deputy, I was a trooper. All these guys, we've worked at some time together. I know them all, and I think they all have the best interest of their communities at heart. So as the sheriff, if we can bring everybody together collectively, we can work task force operations collectively, where we're doing community policing, we're doing police work the same way, and in the proper manner where the public trusts us again, they can work with us. We'll have much better communication with the public. I will definitely work hard to work with each of the law enforcement professionals in this parish and the surrounding parishes. Crime is no longer geographic specific. We have people come here to commit crime. Lafayette's a beautiful place. We have a lot of wealthy people here. People come here to commit crime. So we have to work intelligently with the other communities around here. We have to work with the other sheriffs, which we mentioned earlier. I'm former state police. 25% of the sheriffs in this state are troopers already. I can already pick up the phone and call these guys. We need to be able to work collectively. Whether it be the city marshal or a chief of police, in my mind, we're all on the same team. We're doing the same job. We just have slightly different roles.
Rick Chargois has been our guest this morning. We do need to take a break. When we come back, it'll be his final segment and be his to talk to listeners and voters. This morning, he is, of course, one of the candidates for Lafayette Parish Sheriff. It's coming up now on 7:53. Coming up now on 7:57 as we wrap up our interview with Rick Chargois, one of the candidates for Lafayette Parish Sheriff. And as we always do, the final moment and a half always for the candidate. Mr. Chargois, your message, please.
First off, I want to thank y'all for having us this morning and having all of the candidates come in here and give us a final opportunity to visit with you and the community and give the community a little bit more to think about before the election. You know, as we go around the parish right now, we're seeing a lot of people that they're very concerned about the election and they're concerned about the negative politics. So I ask everybody out there, please look at us critically. Look at our resumes, look at our backgrounds, and pick the person that you think is going to be the best to serve you. Remember, the sheriff's position, although we look at it as a serious position of authority, it is still a public service position. You're elected to serve the people, and the people that we lead in the Lafayette Parish Sheriff's Office need to be selected on that basis. We need to put good quality people in place that will serve the public and do it with humility and respect. So when you go to the polls, I ask that you consider me to be the next sheriff of Lafayette Parish. I will serve you with honor and dignity and do the best I can to make our community as safe as possible.
Rick Chargois has been our guest, sir. Thank you very much for your time this morning. We appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Coming up now on 7:59, traffic crash, Bluebird between Student and Cornelius, Cameron at Jenkins and northeast Evangeline Thruway at East Willow.